All right. What is up, traders? What's up, tycoons? Super excited for today's video. TLT selling off huge, massive red candle today. We talked about me having some short positions in the last video. I went ahead and closed those today. We'll go over why I closed those, my true thoughts on TLT, and where I think it's going to go. As always, the content provided on this channel is for informational and educational purposes only, and is not intended to be relied upon as legal, financial, or investment advice. So please be sure to read through the full disclaimer, and we'll go ahead and break it down in today's video. Now, I do want to mention very quickly that I did launch my newsletter. We just started that basically last week, and I've sent the first few emails out. It's a completely free email newsletter. All right. There's also a website associated with it. So, you can go back and you can review all of the newsletters that have been sent out. If you join new, you can go and take a look at some of the old posts and old newsletters up on the website as well. Definitely do that if you guys want to help support the channel. Let's go ahead and get into it. This is the daily time frame. Look at this ugly, ugly candlestick, guys. All right. Massive, massive candlestick. And we take a look here, all right, and we can see that this is, this is like one of the most bearish candlesticks you can see, okay, right? You see price action opens up here. We try to push higher and fill this gap, okay? We've had this gap up here. That's what these blue boxes are. They're gaps on the daily time frame. We've had this gap up here, and you can see that it really formed a triple top right here, right? If we zoom down to like a 1 hour time frame really quick, you can see we were not able to fill this gap, right? We came up very close to it three separate times, and price action just was not able to fill that gap. We completely reversed. Oftentimes, these gaps can act as areas of support or resistance. And I mentioned that we had the gap down to fill, right? And that's exactly what we did. We go back to our daily time frame here, and you can see we came down and we filled our gap down below. And that's what I was warning people of. I said, hey, we need to be very cautious that this bounce, right, this strong rebound, because we came down exactly to, not exactly, but right to that 94.73 level before rebounding. And, I advise to be cautious because that could be a potential dead cat bounce. And it's appearing at first glance that that's what we're getting. Now, I want to talk about one of the most useful indicators and strategies that I've had with TLT that's been really, really successful. Okay. And this is going to work for your daily time frame. So let's just zoom out a little bit. And what I want to speak of is the daily MACD. Okay. So we're going to make these, make this MACD a little bit bigger here. Just so you can really see. And I want to show you guys, when you see this MACD roll over, right? So this white line crosses below the red line here. This is what's known as an exit signal. And you see a massive push to the downside, right? And over here, you see a MACD exit signal. White line crosses below the red line, massive push to the downside. White line crosses below the red line, massive push to the downside. White line crosses below the red line. Again, massive, massive push to the downside. And this has been happening time and time again. Now, here recently, price action has been compressing for a long time. So the indicator hasn't led to as, big of gains. All right, really, since we bottomed out in November of 2022, it's led to smaller gains trading that signal, but it's still a very, very useful signal that I mentioned in pretty much all of my TLT videos. And if you take a look at where we rolled over last time. Okay, we got the MACD crossover to the downside right here on July 26th. All right, is once we got that. And TLT opened up at 101.65, and it dropped a whopping $12 almost down to 94.75. So, really, really big move to the downside. But if you've been a fan of the channel, been watching, I've really been waiting for this to happen and waiting very patiently, right? It's been very tempting all these times where TLT has rallied up to these levels, up above 100, up above 105, to buy in, right? And to FOMO into things. But sometimes you just have to trust the analysis. We had this huge, massive gap down to fill. And I said, I don't really want to start a long-term position. Long-term for me, meaning anywhere from 1 year to 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 years out in the future. I'm willing to hold. And I did start that position on this day right here. So, my long-term positions are, in profit right now. And I mentioned how I was hedging to the downside. We had CPI come out today, and the stock market. When we take a look, all right, let's just do that real quick. Let's take a look at SPX and the NDX real quick. Let's take a look at the S&P 500 and Nasdaq. Very mixed reactions today, right? Initially we had a little bit of a rally. Okay, you can see the 930 candlestick here. Initially, we rallied. We rejected this 45.22 level, and we got a very, very strong reversal. Okay. And if we lose this 44.69 level on the SPX, which you can see we essentially closed right there just below it, 44.50 is the next level that I'm targeting. We do have a gap down to fill here as well. This gap back from July 11th of this year. Most likely that's going to fill sometime soon if we break 44.50 and come down to that level. And if we break 44.50, essentially 4,400, but more specifically 43.84 is going to be the big level that I'm looking at. Okay, that was an area that was resistance. We flipped it to support here. We flipped it to support here. So very common, textbook technical analysis, right? Old resistance, old resistance, old resistance becomes new support, new support, new support. And so we're coming back down to test those levels again, potentially. And if we do that, okay, it's going to be very important to see how the stock reacts at this 43.83, 97, essentially 43.84 level. Now, again, that's going to be if we break down below 44.50. And if we flip this to resistance, that's going to be the next target. All right. We're definitely on the verge of breaking down right now. You can see we had this longer uptrend line here that we actually just broke down below. All right. And we keep dancing right here, really holding this level. Look at how many times we've tested this level, guys. We've tested this level many, many times, specifically here on the 1 hour chart, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times. I mean, the more times you test the level, the weaker it's going to get. So it's looking very close to breaking down here, but there's no guarantees, right? I'm not in shorts on the S&P. I'm not in longs on the S&P right now. I'm playing things very carefully right now and doing short-term swing trades, intraday trades. We're doing scalps. All right. We had a very good scalp today, 100%. And you just have to trade what's there, right? And you don't have to force trades, force anything if you're not unsure. We have more inflation data coming out soon. Let's take a look at NDX real quick. All right, and we'll go into NDX, and you can see NDX very, very similar, right? This 15,129 level, right? We've been testing this level. We haven't been able to flip it to resistance. As soon as we flip this to resistance, NDX is heading down to the 15,000 area, which is going to be my specific level, about 14,980. And if we break through there, 14,785 is going to be the next breakdown level, right? So, you can see essentially, I do want to point out though that we need to be mindful. All right, if we take a look at the big rally that these stocks have had, what if this is all just controlled selling for the next rally up, right? And what I mean by that is let me try to draw a better line here. Okay, take a look at this. This is pretty controlled selling here, right? We're seeing essentially a channel, right? And we're just selling and going up and down in this channel, up and down in this channel. Now, again, I mentioned this 14,980 area. Again, that's right along in this channel, and we could end up finding support somewhere along here or at that 15,129 level and trying to rally back up to the upper end of this controlled selling here. You have such a massive move to the upside. This is definitely could just be simply called a bull flag, right? And you're getting that very controlled selling. This is super algorithmic, right? You can spot the algos, the buy and sell algos, and essentially here we're seeing buying algorithms, right? We're seeing buying algorithms just continue to push price higher, and in a very much controlled fashion. We're seeing buying pressure just pushing things higher, and now we have a selling algorithm here and just really just selling off. There's not much catalyst left, right? I mean, we just got through CPI. Most of the big companies have reported earnings in the S&P 500. We do have, NVIDIA coming soon. All right. And NVIDIA will definitely be a rocker, but you have to ask yourself, what's the next catalyst for the next big move, right? Do we really have any type of catalyst to justify another 5 to 10% move to the upside in the NASDAQ or the S&P 500? This is a question that you want to ask yourself, right? Or, could we potentially be seeing the catalyst right now to potentially propel the market down lower, right? We had the Fitch downgrade, we had the Bank of Japan news, could that be the catalyst really to drive the market 5 to 10% lower, right? If you take a look at the correction we've gotten already, we've gotten a 5% correction here in the NASDAQ. Is there more room to the downside, or is 5% all we're going to get? These are some of the questions that you have to ask yourself, right? If we stay in these controlled algorithmic selling structures, it's very possible that we may not get a full 10-15% correction. I mean, take a look what we're building here on the NASDAQ, right? We're starting to build bullish divergence, right? You see higher lows here, you see lower lows here, right? So this is a simple term known as bullish divergence. If I was to draw a trend line here, okay, and then draw another trend line right here, right? Essentially what we have here is one of my favorite patterns known as the inverse bump and run, where you have this prevailing downtrend and then you get a bump down in the price, right? And you see more controlled selling. So we see the larger, selling algorithm right here. Okay. And then you take a look here and, potentially you could say we have a new selling algorithm coming in this area. And, just kind of really pushing prices lower in this area, something like this, I'm just kind of very roughly drawing these things quickly as we go. And, if we break out of here, it's very possible that the NDX could potentially come back up to the 15,510, 15,591, those areas. And if we break above this trend line right here, then we're going to be looking to test the 15,837 to 15,979 areas yet again. Now, remember, we talked about catalysts, right? We talked about spotting the structure. The same things apply for TLT, right? So when we come down here to TLT, does this look more like capitulation, or does this look like controlled selling, right? I mean, what you're seeing here is just complete capitulation right here in the TLT. And we've been getting a little bit of a dead cat bounce. And we talked about that, how that was a possibility. And, essentially this was our buying structure right here. Okay. This is the structure that we're looking at to the buy side. Right. And we're looking to see, is this just some controlled buying right here, a little bit of a healthy rebound after, this huge capitulation that we had in the price. And so far, it appears that that's what we're getting. Right. So we do need to be very mindful. All right. That we could come down and retest this 94.73 area again. But if we do so, then the question is, do we get a double bottom, right? That's something that we need to keep in mind. One reason that I did close some short positions today, not only because they were short-term puts and I'm really in this for the long haul, when it comes to something like TLT. I think eventually the Fed will cut rates. We're seeing a lot of data right now that says that, hey, the Fed doesn't need to cut rates right now. And I've been in the camp of rates are going to be higher for longer. And I think that they're going to remain elevated. And even if they do really pause, that doesn't mean that they have to cut anytime soon. When we take a look at our RSI right here, we're testing this trend line back again. So the big question here is, was this an oops, right? Was this an oopsie daisy? Was this breakdown right here, could that be considered an oops? And are we actually going to find support yet again right here and head towards the upper end of the range? You could say that this is a double bottom from this low to this low here. All right. And that leaves the possibility for us to bounce off of the RSI support trend line and also off of the potential double bottom here and come back and retest our 96.65, 96.53 areas on TLT. All right. But ultimately, if we end up breaking 94.73, I do think it's very possible we could come back down to 92.30. Now, 92.30 is almost the exact lows that we made. Those are going to be at 91.84. But when you look at the close on that daily candlestick here, it's at 92.38. All right. Now, 92.30 is going to be the 1.272 extension. All right. That's going to be your Fibonacci extension to the downside. We mentioned how below 102.88, the possibility of this gap fill and the possibility of coming down to these levels is much higher, right? And when TLT was trading up in these areas and these areas here, a lot of people thought I was crazy for saying that TLT would come down most likely to these 95 area, and that's where I'm waiting to buy. But sometimes you just have to trust your analysis, all right? Weed out the noise. Another possibility for TLT continuing to even head lower is going to be the TNX, right? The TNX looks like it wants to hit 4.227 and 4.330 here in the short term, right? Meaning, not over the next few months. It looks like potentially it could try to hit those very soon. Now, we talked about how it was breaking down here and most likely it was going to come up and look for a retest of this trend line, right? We have the initial trend line from October 21st of 2022, and then July 7th of 2023. We actually closed on the daily candlestick here, August 2nd, broke out. We fell short of these targets here, and it appeared that we were getting a look above and fail, right? So, where we're seeing this false breakout essentially. And this is the opportunity really for bulls, treasury yield bulls, to really step in and push price higher up to those targets. And you can see they failed at that, right? And I mentioned the possibility of a retest. And if you're going to be bullish on something like TLT, you're looking for the breakdown, retest, and then push lower and try to head lower to the 3.8 to 3.643 levels on the 10-year treasury yield. But what we need to be mindful of is if we stay above this trend line, we really increase the odds of coming up to 4.227, 4.33 on the TNX, on the 10-year treasury yield. And that's going to be something that's going to push the price of TLT lower. So you definitely want to pay attention to this as you are trying to navigate the market. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, I do one-on-one coaching sessions every single week. You can always email me, exactlytrades@gmail.com, if you feel like you need a helping hand, or maybe you need a little bit of one-on-one guidance with some of your analysis or some of your trading. We can work on scheduling a session together. Please don't forget to sign up for my free newsletter. All right, I'm giving out free trade ideas every single week, going over some of the charts and setups, similar to different things that we discussed in this video, while also putting out some, general financial knowledge information out there for you guys that I think will be useful for you on your, path to success and on your journey to wealth. So appreciate you watching. Smash the like button to subscribe for more, and I'm out.